If you've ever tried to read through the Old Testament, you've probably hit the book of Leviticus and thought, what is going on here? It's full of these ancient, kind of strange rituals. But what if I told you that one of those rituals is actually like a secret code, a key that unlocks one of the deepest, most powerful truths of the entire Christian faith? See, this is the mystery we're going to unravel today. It all boils down to two goats. On the biggest religious day of the year, one goat was sacrificed, but the other was sent away, totally alive. Why? Well, the answer paints this absolutely stunning picture of what Jesus did for all of us on the cross. So this all went down on what's called the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur. And listen, this was not just another holiday. This was the single most serious, most important day on the entire Israelite calendar. It was the one day a year that was all about dealing with the nation's sin. And the stakes? They were literally life and death. God made it perfectly clear. This was not some casual ceremony. The high priest could only step behind that sacred curtain into the very presence of God on this one day. And he had to follow every single instruction to the letter, or he would die right there on the spot. The message couldn't have been clearer. Dealing with sin has to be done God's way. Okay, so try to picture the scene. The high priest gets himself and his family ready. Then he brings out two goats for the sin of the entire nation. He casts lots, kind of like rolling dice, to decide their fate. One goat is chosen for the Lord, and it's sacrificed. Its blood is taken into the most holy place. But then, the priest goes to the second goat, the one that's still alive. He literally lays his hands on its head and confesses all the sins, all the rebellion, all the wickedness of Israel right over that goat. Then that goat, the scapegoat, is led far away into the wilderness to disappear forever. So you see what's happening? Two goats, two completely different but equally essential jobs. The first goat sacrifice, its blood, paid the penalty for sin. It satisfied the justice of a holy God. But the second goat, the scapegoat, that was a powerful, living illustration. It physically carried the nation's guilt far, far away, where it could never, ever be brought up against them again. And this, right here, is where it all starts to click. The book of Hebrews in the New Testament tells us that all these old rituals were just a shadow of the good things that are coming. They were never the real thing, just a pointer. So if this whole ceremony with two goats was only a shadow, who or what was casting it? Well, first, Jesus perfectly fulfills the role of that high priest. Remember, the priest was the mediator, the go-between, the one who stood between God and the people to make things right. Jesus is our ultimate, our perfect high priest. And the Bible makes this connection so clear. You see, unlike that Israelite priest who could only sneak into God's presence once a year, terrified he might do something wrong, our high priest, Jesus, has walked right into heaven itself. He has permanently opened the way to God for every single person who trusts in him. But here is where the story gets absolutely incredible. Hold on to your hats. Jesus isn't just the priest. In one single mind-blowing act of sacrifice, he is also both of the goats. Think back to that scapegoat. The priest laid his hands on it, right? Symbolically transferring the guilt of the people onto the animal. Well, that is exactly what happened to Jesus on the cross. God made him, the one who had never, ever sinned, to become sin for us. He literally took all of our guilt, all of our shame upon himself. And this wasn't some new idea. Get this. Centuries before Jesus was even born, the prophet Isaiah saw it coming. He wrote that the Lord would lay on his special servant the iniquity of us all. That is pure scapegoat language. Jesus is the one who bore our sins and carried them away for good. But Jesus didn't just carry our sin away. He also did the job of the first goat, the sacrifice. Its blood satisfied God's perfect justice. Now, there's a big theological word for this, propitiation. It just means to satisfy the righteous and holy anger of God against sin. And the scapegoat's job, that has a fancy term too, expiation. And that's the act of atoning for sin by completely removing it, just wiping the slate clean for the guilty person. And here is the key. For a complete atonement, for things to be truly made right, you needed both. You had to have propitiation to deal with God's justice, and you had to have expiation to remove your guilt. The two goats were two halves of one solution, but together, they only provided a temporary fix that lasted for just 1 year. But on the cross, Jesus did both jobs at the same time, perfectly, and forever. His death
was the ultimate propitiation, satisfying God's justice once and for all. And by taking our sins upon himself, he provided the ultimate expiation, removing them from us completely. One sacrifice did the work of both goats.
And this is exactly why the old way was never meant to be permanent. The Day of Atonement had to be repeated year after year after year. It was a constant reminder of sin. But the sacrifice of Jesus, that was once, for all time. The blood of animals could only cover sin for a little while. The blood of God's own Son cleanses us forever.
And that is why, with his very last breath on the cross, Jesus could shout those 3 words, "It is finished." The job of atonement, the job that was foreshadowed for centuries by those 2 goats, was now done, complete. The shadow had finally given way to the real thing. No more sacrifice is ever needed.
So why does any of this matter to you and me today? It matters because Leviticus 16 isn't just some dusty, outdated law in an ancient book. It's a divinely inspired blueprint. It's a detailed portrait of God's incredible rescue plan, painted hundreds of years before Jesus ever walked the earth. So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's simple, really. The Day of Atonement was a shadow, pointing to the reality we find in Jesus. He is our great high priest. His one-time sacrifice both satisfied God's justice and completely removed our sin. His work is done. It is finished. And that leaves us with just one final thought. After seeing this rich, detailed picture from the Old Testament, how does understanding this ancient shadow, this incredible 2-goat prophecy, change the way you see the cross and the absolute completeness of what Jesus did for you today?